interesting thing of, you know, it's almost for me like when you at the start line, and you're waiting for the gun to go, and you start
Yeah,
running. It's like this moment of like, oh, it's coming, it's coming.
yeah.
Uh,
It's sort of a bit strange. It's like, you're waiting, and then the record button goes on, and then it's like, do I need to put a persona on now? I need
yeah,
to be a different person. Of course you don't, but it's strange how it kind of does that.
it shifts. Yeah. It's something shifts. Yeah. Um, so I wanted to start by um, reading a quote that you shared with me from, I think it was from the surrender experiment,
Oh
uh,
yes.
as an entry into our conversation. I thought it was really powerful, and somehow I think it's very relevant for where you are, where I am, and I think where this conversation will go. And it says, is it possible that life has far more to give us than we could ever take for ourselves?
Mm.
Is it possible that life has far more to give us than we could ever take for ourselves? And I'm curious what comes up to you right now, but also like perhaps what was present for you back then when you shared it with me.
Yeah, when I heard it, actually, I was listening to the surrender experiment, and I had to pause it and write it down, because it just, I haven't done that for any other thing in that book, but when that came out, I had to write it down, because um I thought it just brought up a lot of different things all at once, and it's really difficult to sort of pinpoint any specific one circumstance that it brought up. It brought up many things, I suppose, little flashes of maybe ways I'd tried to conduct myself in the past, and kind of juxtaposing it against that quote and thinking, hold on, was I just trying to force my way into doing certain things? Was I trying to, you know, it's kind of resistance, really, isn't it? It's resisting life's flow and resisting the way that things want to go, and being like, oh yeah, well, if I become super mechanical about this sort of thing, am I going to get this result? Exams are one of them. Maybe I never struggled with exams, but I think sometimes when you have that pressure on you and you're revising and then you really try and concentrate, you are resisting quite a lot. And it's that balance of structure and flow. Once again, yes, you do need some structure, but you also need elements of flow. And I thought, actually, for probably most my life, I've adopted an exam mentality towards it, in
Mm,
that, oh, I just need to create structure, just need to create structure, just need to create structure. And I'm naturally a creative person. I played four instruments when I was young, all the way up until I was 20, and I was on stage quite a lot. That all went when I did pharmacy at uni, so it was very technical, scientific course. And somewhere along the line, the sort of creativity went away. This was all brought up by this one quote, because I felt, have I been hammering against life when I should maybe have just, you know, let go and
mm,
just allowed things to happen. And I wondered what I might have been missing, because there have been instances in my life where I allowed certain things to happen and unfold in a natural way, and good things happened. So it also brought that up. And so I was comparing that against, trying to create loads of structure, and sort of rules and boundaries, and do this and don't do this. And it just made me feel like, almost like a weight was lifted off my shoulders when I heard it, because I thought, you don't need to resist so much. You don't need to use that energy to resist life, you can, instead of resisting life with that energy, you can channel it. You can sort of move with it. Yeah, that's what it brought up for me. And it made me feel like I don't have to put myself under as much pressure as what I've been putting myself under, because I have been under a lot of pressure these last few months. And I kind of had this realization that I don't need to.
Mm.
I can just trust a little bit more in the way that things are unfolding, not to just completely, completely let myself go, so to speak, but I don't need to be as regimented as I have been. I don't need to be as unkind to myself and say, oh no, you have to do this. If you set the goal, you have to do this. Sometimes goals are not, goals can be prohibitive.
Mm.
And the reason I think this is because I feel like when you have a goal, it allows you to focus, and it's a good thing to be able to focus. But also what the focus does, it kind of does this to your vision. It gives you like a tunnel. And when you have a tunnel like this, you can see the goal more clearly and focus on the goal. But what you miss is all of this stuff around you. And sometimes the stuff that's right in front of you, that's immediately around you, could be taking you to a better place than the goal. So what's to say that, the goal is like you trying to take something from life, and sort of you widening your gaze and appreciating what's around you is more like, this is what life has to give you. So who's to say that I know what's best? Who's to say that I know that that goal is the one that I need to go for? If I was just to do this and like have a proper look around and, oh, do you know what? That looks quite good. And actually, maybe if we're talking about a journey and we're talking about maybe being in a jungle, maybe the goal that I set, there's like a massive jungle in front of me, and I've got to hack it down to get to that goal. Maybe I'm looking around and I've got a goal that's maybe an outcome in life that's similar to my goal, or kind of takes me to a better place. And the path's a little bit clearer on this side. So maybe I just, instead of, focusing too much and being too fixated on a certain specific outcome, just by taking it back a bit and be like, well, you know what, there's a bit less resistance this way. Let's sort of go with that and see where it takes us. Maybe you can't see the outcome in that. Maybe outcome's not even important. Maybe it's just a clear path. And then you just have to trust where that path's taking you. So yeah, it brought up many, many different things for me. And these sorts of ideas started coming into my head.
Wow. Yeah. Um, yeah, it's almost like sometimes we'd like choose the hard way, where like there's actually, you can just walk around, and there's a shortcut. Um, so it's almost like we've been conditioned that like it has to be hard, and you have to struggle, and you have to be
Mm.
um, committed and disciplined. And yes, all these things have their place, and there's different ways of doing things. So this is something I've been kind of also exploring for myself. But it's also interesting that we're coming from completely opposite poles. Like you're coming from the structure, discipline, committed, and I'm coming just flow, ease, doing what I want when I want. And my exploration has been, how can I lean into more structured, how can I like channel that flow? And for you, it's like, okay, now I have this structure, I have this discipline, how can I flow a bit more? So it's very fascinating how it seems like most of us come from either one of these extremes, to find that, that balance, that intertwine. But it's almost like we need to, or oftentimes we just go from one extreme to the other. Um, and it feels for me like it's a necessary process of like calibration, It's almost like, the pendulum swing. You almost have to go to another extreme to kind of like keep bouncing back and forth to kind of like find that balance.
Yeah, I wasn't going to interrupt you, but if I was going to, that's exactly what I would have said. It's like a pendulum. That's what it feels like in my life, definitely. It's sort of like I was I didn't really have structure when I was younger. I was more of a go with the flow type person, very impulsive. Um, I didn't struggle at school. This is the thing, and maybe this is why I didn't have structure, because this is the thing at school. They teach you that academia is the most important thing and that exams are the most important thing, and I never struggled at exams. I didn't really need to work that hard at it. So in my mind, my conditioning was, oh, you don't really need to do anything, you don't need to show up, you don't need to do anything, you already know it, you go to the lesson, it goes in your head, and then you can do an exam and then you're fine and everyone loves you for it. And it's like that's the destructive, so it was destructive to my psyche, because I learned that I felt like I didn't need to work hard. I felt a bit entitled that, oh yeah, but if you can just understand a few little concepts, then you'll be okay in life. And then that doesn't work when you when you go out into the real world. I'm 38 now, but when I was like 21, it was like, that is a really bad attitude to have. And you can't take that into the way. You can't take that, I'll go with the flow and everything will be all right. So I had to really fight to introduce structure into my life. And that fight was so intense that it took me to a place where I was extremely structured, and I felt like I'd lost my creativity. And that's probably why I'm just coming to the realization now as I'm speaking, it's probably why I lost a lot of my creativity around my 20s, early 30s. And possibly why now I feel like the pendulum is kind of swinging back, and it's like right now is the time to really start opening up again, feeling that flow. My structure's pretty extreme, but I appreciate it. I feel like I needed to introduce that into my life in order to just function, because I felt like I wasn't even functional. I was just all over. And I think what's important is I'd say beyond flow and structure, it's just intention and consciousness.
Mm.
Because you can flow, and it can be, I don't know. I don't know if you can flow unconsciously. I think that doesn't make sense. I think when you're flowing in a very kind of conscious way. But sometimes you can get carried away in that, and it can become unconscious. And you can almost convince yourself that, oh yeah, I'm just flowing, when actually all you're doing is avoiding life, and you're being very unintentional about things. So what you sometimes wrongly confuse as being flow is actually you being unintentional, and I think that's wrong. And I got caught into that trap so many times. I thought, yeah, I'm just flowing with it, I'm just a creative person. But actually, I was eating too much, I was drinking too much, I was not sleeping enough, I wasn't really paying attention to the way my life was going. And that was the unconscious part. I think when you can bring consciousness into whatever you're doing, I feel like that balance that we're talking about between flow and structure, I think it's sort of almost naturally, it knows what to do when you're conscious and intentional. And it's like, you're really aware of yourself and where you are right now, and you know what your needs are. And so therefore, what sort of experience you need at this point. And it is as simple as that and as complicated as that, because you really just need to be able to listen to yourself.
Mm. As you say, as simple and as complicated as that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because it is just about as just listening to yourself, but actually, once you start getting into that whole thing of, well, listen to yourself, that's a whole other can of worms, isn't it? Because to listen to yourself means that you have to block out all the other noises that are going on, and that is not easy. That takes a lot of practice, takes quite a lot of dedication.
Mm. Yeah. Mm. So many, so many beautiful things you said. Yeah, it's the analogy, right, that I was sharing before we started recording about tuning the radio and that noise, to find the frequency where your authentic self speaks that is clear. Otherwise, you know, the environment that we're surrounded by design is just so stimulating, so noisy, that to go against that, to create that space where we can listen and hear, like, there's so much friction. And
Mm.
even, me now being on a social media detox and kind of digital detox, and like really being very intentional with what I'm consuming, still, like, I'm seeing the ways, and still where I'm being pushed and pulled into different noises. You remove
Yeah,
one, but then you notice there's
it
something else,
always finds a
something else.
way, doesn't it?
Yeah, yeah,
It's like, well, if you're not going to do that, then what about this? What about
yeah.
this? Like a little temptation.
Mind is so sneaky in that way, and yeah, it's not. Yeah, it's like to go against that, friction, like against the current of life, or like not the current of life, but the current of society. Like, it takes a lot to kind of push through that and to
It's
eliminate.
scary. If you really boil it down, it's scary. And I mean, getting into, I suppose, when you're talking about society, I suppose we're getting into constructs here. To step outside of constructs is extremely scary,
Mm,
because even in very small ways, sometimes, just making eye contact with a stranger, um, certain places frowned upon. You don't do it,
mm,
you know. But what's to say that there's a right way or a wrong way? And to just have a conversation with someone, or to hug someone in a social situation, to hug them or to kiss them on both cheeks, or what do you do? Like, who invented these rules? And to sort of be able to distance yourself from the tendency to want to do these things, and understanding where that comes from, to distance yourself from that is quite scary. And what if you want to go deeper, and you want to know more about someone else, and you want to open up, but then that person is not ready, and those people are not ready, and perhaps they've been friends of yours for years, they might be relatives, there's a possibility that you might be alienating them, and you might, you know by wanting a deeper relationship with these people who you love very much, by kind of stating that, you could actually create distance to begin with. I always believe it comes round full circle, but it hurts. It hurts to do that, especially with people that you care about a lot, and not everyone's ready for it. And you actually just have to be able to accept that, and that's why it's scary, I think, to really listen to that voice,
mm,
because the chatter above it is like, well, you don't need to say that, just keep it as it is, just stay on the surface, you don't need to no need to go. And to some extent it's right, you don't need to just like go straight in there and be like, I surrender everything. Here's everything about me. You don't do that, and you don't have to do that. It's just that if you want to just begin to explore that, you are running the risk of breaking down old relationships. But I believe that sometimes they need to be broken down in order to be built up in the right way. But it's a risk,
Mm.
and it's not easy.
Mm. I was having goosebumps every time you spoke. Now I was like, oh, it resonates, and yeah. Mm. And one of the things you shared, that I think might be interesting also to explore right now. You said something around how human connection unlocks parts of yourself.
Mm, yeah, absolutely, it does. I think I can't remember if this is something I read or if it's maybe from, sort of religious background, teaching. So I was raised as a Hindu. And so, in India, people say namaste. And what you're doing is you're saluting, or you're acknowledging the divine in the other person. That's what the actual meaning is that you recognize who they truly are. So it has a very deep meaning when you say namaste to someone. And I think there's something to be said for that, because what you're actually doing is you're recognizing a part of yourself in someone else. And I think this can be taken the wrong way. It can often be taken as, well, that's just narcissistic, but it's not. It's kind of like, it's the other way. It's sort of like, it's compassionate, because you wouldn't hurt yourself. You would treat yourself with compassion, and you want the best for yourself as well. And so when you're speaking with someone else, uh, what's lovely about that, when you connect with someone, is I often feel like I see parts of myself in the other person that I love about myself. And they've reminded me of that, you know, and that's a gift.
What about other way around?
Oh, yeah.
When
So,
you
like,
when you see someone and like the judgment arises,
yeah, 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 yeah.
how do you interpret that?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's me as well.
Mm.
That's all on me, because it's all my experience. I can't really, when you boil it down, you can't really put anything onto the other. Not really. And it's not about blame, it's about responsibility. You know, when you put the responsibility onto something external, what you're actually doing is you're giving your power away. But when you can take responsibility, I mean, it's just the word itself, response ability. It's the ability to respond. It's not saying it's your fault. It's just saying that in this moment, right now, you absolutely have the power and the capacity to respond. And so, if you feel like there's some wrongdoing occurring because of maybe some external source has brought these feelings up for you, you have the ability to respond to that. And in that sense, it's your responsibility to deal with that. And that gives you the power to deal with it. I'm not saying that I'm able to do that every single time, but that's I suppose that's the challenge that I've given myself, in that I I am able to I'm able to have agency over the way that I experience life. And this is a sort of a power that I think everyone has.
Mm.
that
I'm
ability.
curious if you would have an example of like recent judgment that arose in you. How I'm curious like to understand. I have my process of interpreting it, but I'm curious to understand like what's your process. I get, you know, the responsibility and like slowing down and like noticing the judgment and being able to respond, but like I'm curious, how do you interpret that?
I interpret it with compassion. I think so.
Do you have an example of maybe recent to illustrate that?
Yes, yeah. So recently, I I have an agency with, it's like a virtual assistant outsourcing agency, and we provide sort of temporary staffing solutions to people in business. Anyway, someone who I provided solutions to tried to poach one of my staff,
What
and
does that mean?
they tried to take them away. So these belongs to the agency. They tried to recruit them and keep them as their own. And I didn't say like yes or no or whatever. I spoke to my member of staff, and I said, look, no one's putting a gun to anyone's head. Um, but this is what we're doing with the agency. This is where we're going. This is where I see you fitting in. It's your decision at the end of the day. But if you do choose to do hours for them, then you're making a choice to stay with them, and that's your choice. But you do have to make a choice. You either go across there, or you stay with me, and that's up to you. And they decided to stay. But the person that tried to poach them, to try to take them on, was really, really angry. They were really upset that I had forced this person to stay, and they started calling me names, and they were really, really very nasty on the phone. And in the moment, it was very difficult to take that, and I had to end the conversation. But I processed it afterwards as being, well, actually, this person, and you absolutely should stand up for yourself and say that's not right, and I did. I said, you don't, why are you talking to me like that? Don't talk to me like that. But in my head, and in my personal, my own emotional state, I was more thinking that this is just a reflection of that own person's chatter.
Mm.
This is just the way that this is the path that life has taken them down. They, they feel like they're not in control. They've lost control of a situation, and this is why all of this stuff is coming out. And my responsibility to myself was just to feel just that little moment of compassion for that person, because actually the way that they spoke to me, they must be struggling.
Mm.
There must be something else going on. Like, from what she said to me and the way she spoke to me, there must be some other things going on that I don't know about. And that doesn't mean it's okay for her to say what she said to me. But for my own internal state, it was just that understanding and that compassion that that's just what they're going through right now. And perhaps that's what they need to go through. And
Mm.
perhaps this is what I need to go through too. Because let me tell you something, in the past, I've not stood up for myself, and I just let people say whatever they wanted to say to me. It's a very recent thing. It's funny how life puts these situations in front of you and says, right, are you going to deal with it now? Oh, right, you're not. Okay, well, we're just going to go again. Are you going to deal with it now? Oh, right, you're not. Okay, well, let's just do it again, and keep going on and on and on. And so that was there for me as much as it was for her. And I was quite grateful for that, because this is an exercise I am going through. And it was the workshop that we went to in medicine where they talked about consent. And I've always thought about consent, in sort of like man to woman relationships as being, I need to be the one that understands what my partner is wanting or not wanting. Shall I tell you the mind blowing moment I had? And this might sound really stupid to anyone else that's listening, was the fact that I can say no because my boundary setting was awful. And throughout my life, my boundary setting has been awful. I don't know when to say no. When we did that workshop, I sort of thought, oh, I can say no. I can tell someone to back off. I can say, I don't feel comfortable with this because, you know, maybe in life you're perhaps not ready. You're not ready to deal with certain stressors, and it's okay to say you're not ready to deal with it. And that often comes out in the form of no, thank you very much. We can't do this. We can't do that. You do have to do that. And I did not understand that as a concept because it's other people's chatter and other people's sort of anxieties. If you're not careful, they can come on to you, and then you take them on, and then what you already have as your own internal chatter increases and increases, and you have to protect yourself against that happening. And I never used to, and I would often take on a lot from other people and not respond, not stand up for myself. And so that situation, when I really looked at it and I really understood it, it was like, well, that's what she needed. She needed to go through that. Maybe she needed to get that off her chest, and she has to deal with it in her own way. And, you know, I felt that, yeah, it must be tough. Whatever situation she's in must be difficult.
Mm.
But then I looked at it for myself as well. I thought, there it is. There's the little challenge. Like, you know, there it is. Stand up for yourself, because there's life giving you an opportunity to do it and to say, no, thank you very much. Please don't talk to me like that.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. Seeing life as a series of experiments to that prompt you to, to grow, like
Yeah, there's
life.
gifts on both sides.
Mm.
There's, in that conversation, which was it was a nasty exchange of words. Well, from her side, it was really nasty, and I was kind of like not really having a chance to say anything until I said, "Don't talk to me like that." That's all I was able to say. But there were gifts on both sides. There's a gift in that for me. There was an opportunity for me to grow to the next level, and it was like when I understood that, it became a thing of, well, actually everything could be a spiritual practice, really. Every single tiny little thing, whether it's good or bad.
Yeah. Yeah, and everything is, but it requires, I think, a certain level of, work to come to that stage and to come to that realization. Because, what I'm hearing from you sharing that is, you're at the certain level capacity, like point in your journey where you could like really see the situation for what it is and see beyond, her just attacking you and taking it personally. Yeah, she's attacking me, but like kind of taking that bird's eye view of like, what is actually going on there? People don't just lash out for a thing like this, right? So there must be more. There must be more, and like bringing that compassion and understanding. And you know, if two people at the same kind of level of awareness meet, then it's explosive, right? It's toxic. It's like
Yeah.
you cannot get each other's points across because it's just, yeah, it's a conflict. But when at least one person can, hold that and like create that boundary, then yeah, as you say, I love what you said about, life just giving something over and over and over again. It's almost like it's intentionally doing that so we get like really frustrated at some point and be like, fuck, why do I keep doing this? Why
Yeah,
do I keep not standing up for myself? Like, I'm fucking fed up. Like, this
yeah,
needs to stop now. But like, until we get to that point, it's kind of just like repetition, repetition, repetition
yeah.
until we can see that pattern, and transform that.
But that's also why consciousness and awareness is so important, because unless you unless you've cultivated your own consciousness and your awareness, then those things are going to keep coming up. Because if you're not aware of you causing a problem or having a certain issue somewhere, it's going to keep coming back until it's staring you in the face, and there's so much pain that you have to do something about it. Whereas if you can go deeper into your consciousness and become more aware of things happening, you'll notice them happening at just a much more subtle level, and you'll be able to deal with them at a subtle level. Like the snowball that grows bigger as it goes down the hill, you can deal with it a lot further back so that it doesn't become something. So this whole idea of meditation and becoming more conscious and more aware of your true self, it is actually a way of preventing the proverbial snowball from becoming something big that you can't
Mm,
handle, because then you can address it more at a subtle level, at smaller levels, and slowly you can start just clearing that path.
mm, mm, mm. Yeah, having a bit of a blank moment. Hmm.
What was your you said that you had a way of interpreting the situation when someone is, you know, sort of causing certain negative or uncomfortable, painful feelings to come up with you. What's your
Yeah, judgment.
way?
Um, I've shared this on the previous episode, so I don't want to go into the same example, but um, I guess my understanding of judgment is something that I guess one of the layers is something that I cannot accept within myself. Like, for example, I could I could go now into a park, put on my headphones and dance on my own. Oftentimes when I say it to someone, they're like, "Ugh, ugh," and when I think about myself in the past, like if I was to see someone like just being so free and dancing and and flowing and doing what they love, I would feel uncomfortable. Like, and I would judge them because I'd be like, what's wrong with her? Like, is she stupid? Like, it's a public place. What the fuck?
Yeah.
Um, because I was not free to do that. And so then, we feel this discomfort, and then we, instead of like, what is it that I'm feeling? Why am I feeling this? We like, we kind of, in almost in a way to process it or not to be with it, we externalize it by creating that judgment, to say, oh, this is wrong, um, you know, whatever, putting on all these different labels. So for me, it's like a reflection of where I am not free, when the judgment arises. And then whenever I see it, like for me, it's a game, and I'm like, okay, what's there?
Yeah.
It's like I become, like an investigator instead of,
Yeah.
but again, going back to the level of awareness, because in the past, the judgment would arise and I would, bleh, you know, I would express it. So I was not aware, like the judgment, the conditioning, the pattern, just takes over and it does its thing. until I became aware of, like, so the previous story that I shared in on the previous episode was how for the first time I saw women who are not shaved. And I was like, ugh, this is disgusting. Like, how? And at the same time, I was like, but I love these women. We're doing this training together. They're amazing. And in my head, this paradox of two seemingly different things of like love and judgment or love and hate. And that's when like it kind of glitched the matrix for me and snapped me out of like, oh, okay, I need to look at this now because it's like it doesn't like there's a glitch in the matrix. So that was like my first awakening into like my experiential journey into what judgment is and the exploration of that. And then I took on and I didn't shave for a very long time, you know, and I was like, ugh. And then I was like, oh. But the exploration was like, where is the judgment actually coming from? I have never decided that I don't like hair. It was just like it was in me. It was the society, you know, the image of a woman all clean and shaved. And so that was, yeah, kind of my entry and exploration. And now I just see it as a game, you know, interesting. I'm judging this, you know, why? And
Mm.
again, I think the power in that is where I think where a lot of the times people trip is when the judgment arises, instead of like seeing it as an arising, as happening, people think that it's them judging, and
Yeah.
then they become judgmental towards themselves, you know, for that judgment, if you know, they are aware, but or some people, you know, they're not even aware that it's happening. But I guess what I'm seeing in like more maybe like more evolved and self-aware people is when you're on the path of, you know, spirituality and like peace for everyone, no judgment, you know, um, and the judgment arises, people are like, fuck, but I've done all this work. Why am I keep judging my, you know?
Mm. Yeah, yeah,
But it's like that recognition of like, oh, it just like thought, right? It's automatic, it arises. So that recognition of like, hmm, you know, interesting. Let's look into that as opposed to judging ourselves for having that judgment.
yeah, yeah. It's sort of like taking two steps back, isn't it? Or not back, or two steps out to sort of get the bigger perspective on what is, because I don't think we can ever rid ourselves of that, those tendencies to come up. We can only observe them, and I don't think there is. I don't even think there's. I think they all have their place.
Mm,
I think judgment has its place, and it's needed. Actually, it's a function of living in this world. You do need to be able to discern and judge and say, at a very basic level, if I eat this, it's going to sustain me. If I eat this, it's going to kill me. That is a judgment, and it's as a tool, it's there for our survival, and it's important. It's just when that tool starts getting used for all sorts of different other things, but you can't get rid of the tool, because then you probably won't survive. So you need it there. It's just that it's something that we have a tendency towards, is that sometimes we just have that, like you say, that arising, and this need to use a certain tool to get through a certain situation, and perhaps we're just using the wrong tool. Maybe we just don't have the right tools to deal with that particular situation, and so instead of using something else, we pick up the wrong one. And actually that's quite normal, and that's almost to be expected. I think as well there's a place for ego. We need to have uh, an ego to show up in this material society. The important thing is not to identify with it. It's not whether you have it or don't have it, it's whether you identify with it or not. Do you think that's you? And the more you think that that's you, then the more difficult it can be, I think, to navigate through certain things. But if you acknowledge that, okay, there's this ego, it's there, it's not really going to go anywhere. I have it. It's not me. It's something I have. I possess it. So it's like, you know, there's the separation. There's the I, and then there's the actual I, and then there's the ego. And all these things exist, but I guess the sort of the work or the practice is to just understand that that is not you. You know, it's difficult. You know, it's not easy at all. But I feel like the more work I do on myself, just ever so slightly, I just get a little bit more understanding into what that actually means, because I've not completely understood it yet. But it's just bit by bit, slowly, slowly. I'm trying to understand what it means to not identify with these things.
Mm.
They are things, they are possessions almost, you know, like clothes. They're just possessions. They're not you.
Mm. Yeah. And it's almost like what I'm seeing and what you're sharing is, you know, it is a process, and like I am aware of the concept, you know, I'm aware of my ego, and still it's like it's so I think it's going to be a lifelong process, you know, to just keep stepping back, stepping back, stepping back. Um, but what I'm realizing is like the more we can step back from, you know, the mental construct of like who we are, like what we think we are, the more space gets created. And then, you know, in the situations like um, with one of your business partners or colleagues, where you can see the situation and not react to it,
Mm.
because you can observe all these mental constructs and patterns that are going on. This ego that was very much present in her being, you know, her identification of who she is and what the situation is. um, and yeah, so what I'm seeing is like the work of growth is like really becoming aware and disidentifying from who we think we are, to create that space and that pause of, you know, I love the analogy that you said about tools, because it's like when we're unaware and we're identified with the ego, with the identity of who we think we are, it's like we're just like we will take whatever is there, you know, to just protect it, and you know, and like fight whatever, like, you know, the fire. um but once we're like at peace and we know who we are, then we can just say no, this doesn't serve me, you know, we're not reacting, we're just like, whew, you know, this needs to stop now, you know, I'm ending this.
Mm.
So yeah, it's like it creates more spaciousness in the response as opposed to just react.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that can become quite, to me, it's quite a tricky one, because I know from a lot of the stuff I've read over and over from very, you know, many different people who have gone down a spiritual path, is this whole thing of, you know, that likes and dislikes are not really a thing, you know. Getting beyond, oh, I like this so I'm going to do it, and I dislike this and I'm not going to do it. And it's like trying to understand and fathom that is, and knowing the difference between your likes and your dislikes and sort of where your boundaries are right now, that's something I grapple with quite a lot. Because give you an example, in Michael Singer's surrender experiment, he goes through a really very, very challenging time where he is being, it's lawsuits left, right, and center. And these are, I love that book for the very reason that I feel like it's one of the only books I've ever read that truly talks about what karma yoga is. And it's the yoga of action, of taking action, and burning through our entanglements, all the confusions that we have in life, which are, sort of, I guess they're rooted in our likes and our dislikes and our preferences and what we want and what we don't want. Because all of these things, what they do is they remind us that we're separate. They are like, these are my people, those are not my people. And then immediately separation, it's like us and then the other. And actually it's being able to see beyond that and understand that actually fundamentally everything's connected, and not allowing these judgments to cloud your mind. And what's amazing about that book is that he goes through these experiences not really paying too much heed to his own likes and dislikes, just allowing life to take him where he needs to take him. And if life wants him to work hard, he'll work hard. If life wants him to go through a lawsuit, he goes through a lawsuit. If it wants him to see success here and a failure here, by our definitions, then that's what he does. And that is a really the purest version of karma yoga that exists, because it is about understanding that that life has its own flow, and actually what I like and what I dislike are perhaps not as important as I think they are. I struggle with it because on one level I understand it, and on the other level, I feel like there needs to be some level of protection for where I am right now, where I need to protect what I have. But then maybe that notion is also another little construct, this need to protect myself, and that can lead to its own problems as well. So how do you start working on stripping that layer off too? It's quite a it's almost like a vicious circle. You could drive yourself mad thinking about it, but it's always something at the back of my head that makes me think, should I be am I being a bit precious about this? Am I just thinking too much about what I want, and and creating a separation, like there's me and then there's the other, and not really understanding what the true truth is. And perhaps it goes back to what you were saying about when you're on a path, about judging yourself on where you are, and saying, well, oh no, but I'm on this spiritual path, I shouldn't be thinking like this, I ought not to be thinking like this. But perhaps there's an element of wherever you are is where you are, and you're just actually, all you're doing is dealing with the things that you need to be dealing with, and it maybe doesn't need to be more complicated than that.
I love your look. You're like,
Maybe, yeah.
you're asking a question, and you're like,
I feel like I've answered my own question.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. What if everything is very simple and the mind just makes it very complicated? But yeah, I think what I'm like observing in this conversation is, and the contemplation is like, it's the evolution of consciousness, from the ego-based self to, so there are stages, from it's me, then it's we, then it's us, and and then it's like, what does life want to create through me? And it's no like right or wrong, it's just where we've come in our journey, and just like observing, okay, like for some people it's just like, I want money, I want car, I want beautiful women, and I just want to enjoy life, and it's like, okay, enjoy that. And then it's like, after for some people that passes and they're like, okay, so now I've had that. Okay, what's next do I want, you know? It's like maybe now I want more meaning, you know, maybe I want to like start donating and like, you know, and it's like, oh, that feels good, you know, and after some time it's like, but it's still something is not enough, you know? Like how can I make global impact, you know? And so I think there's stages. It's almost like, you know, the soul is always yearning for more and to express itself deeper and to understand and feel life deeper. And so we move through those stages of evolution. Some of us, some don't, and it's okay, you know. But it's just noticing where we are, and it's okay, you know.
Mm.
Whatever we are is okay. Um,
It's like whatever you're going through, you need to go through it.
yeah, it's
And I, you've almost got to get it out of your system to, to understand that there's more, you know, get it, sort of like been there, done that sort of
yeah,
thing.
yeah, 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 yeah.
And then, okay, now I'm ready for something else because I know, and it's not enough to intellectually know. It's never enough to intellectually know. You have to experience.
Mm.
You have to have the experience. And for me, there are certain experiences that I know I still need to go through materially. There's so many that I need to go through from a material perspective, from business, from from my material prosperity. I have to go through it. I know I do, um, because it's still there. And actually, by resisting it, I wouldn't be doing myself, the right. I wouldn't be doing the right thing by resisting it, because I tell you something very interesting is that when I started off in business, I went in with the intention of, yes, I had all these ideas about wanting financial prosperity, in material prosperity, and having all these things and having choices that perhaps I wouldn't be able to had I not gone into it. So I went in with that intention. But the really interesting thing about working for yourself and creating something for yourself is that it goes full circle. So you realize that, for example, yes, you want to get into it, and then you're okay. I need to make some money. Okay, how do I make money? You find this market, and then you go for it, and then but then you realize that in finding the market and trying to understand it, you don't understand it too well. Maybe you're successful, then you start getting some sales coming, then you actually have to deliver the product, and then you realize that you've got all of these things going on, and there's no possible way you can do all of these things all at once. So then you need to start recruiting people. Then you recruit people, and then you think, okay, great, they can do it, and then they leave, and you're like, well, why did they leave? And then you're like, I need to recruit again. So you bring in some more people, and actually, as you keep going through it, you start to get to this point where you become very, very naturally self-reflective. Because why did that person leave? Is it because of me? Why are we not getting sales? Is it because of me? Do I need to do something different? Why is that marketing funnel not working properly? Do I need to learn something? Am I doing something differently? Do I need to speak to that person differently, in a way that gets them to work? In order for that to happen, do I need to grow? Do I need to become a different person? Am I thinking with the right mindset in this situation? Am I doing myself out of favors in business? All of these things, what they do really naturally is it goes full circle and it comes back to the self. And so what started off as a journey of wanting to improve my financial situation, it came back and it doubled down on me, and I ended up just working on myself. And I discovered as I worked on myself, things in business started to improve. And then so I thought, okay, if I work on myself, then perhaps the theory is that if everyone works on themselves, then the business can grow. And this is why I started coaching my staff. I didn't just hire them. I coach them every 12 weeks and ask them what they want out of their lives, and is this all working for them. And as soon as I started doing it about 2 years ago. I just started seeing the results come in, and I thought, so it's all about working on the self then. And so what started off in one intention, it came back onto me. And I actually think that if you throw yourself into any situation in life, whether it's in business or in relationships or in your hobbies, or if it's in whatever area that might be, if you really throw yourself into it and truly allow yourself to sort of feel it fully, it will always come back onto yourself. It will always, like, it's inescapable. The idea of this whole sort of tendency to experience and want to experience life, there can be no other logical outcome than for it to come back onto you, and for you to realize that actually I need to evolve as a person. I truly believe that that's what life does. You want to experience life externally in some way, but if you're really listening and you have kind of surrendered yourself to it, and really gone into it with the sort of gusto and the intensity that you want to, it will always come back, and you'll always discover that this is just about evolving myself. You can't escape it.
Mm. Mm. It's always been me all along.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. This quote keeps coming back throughout the entire conversation, and I'm just waiting for the time to put it in. I don't think there's going to be a time, so I'll just say it. It's by Peter Crone, and he says, "Life will present you with people and situations to reveal where you're not free."
Hmm.
And it's literally everything in life is designed for our growth, for our evolution, for our deeper experience of self. Yeah, every trigger, every judgment, everything that comes our way that we're like, ugh, it's like, ooh, how can I expand into it? How can I receive it as a gift, and a way to grow and evolve? So I think this is also one of the themes that we've been kind of weaving um, into creating a different perspective for an access for people to realize, what you're being challenged by, what you're judging, what you're resisting is actually a gift. And
Yeah,
you
I love that.
and God and life will keep bringing that gift to you. And it's like,
Yeah.
it's like a spoiled baby. It's like, no, I don't want it. I don't want it. I don't want it.
Yeah.
And then at some point, it's like you realize, oh, I've been getting this gift for so long and I've been resisting. And actually, once we're ready, once we build that capacity in our nervous system, once we build the awareness, as you were saying, to simply just say no and feel so fucking empowered by it, it's like, oh, that was actually a gift all along that I wasn't seeing.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. And what you were saying before about seeing the person in the park and watching them be so free and dancing to the music on their headphones, and you having that sort of visceral reaction to them, what that was reminding you of is what you just said. It's reminding you where you're not free. And I often feel like that happens, and that happens everywhere in life. People people respond in a sort of defensive way to other people who are free, because it reminds them that they're not.
Mm.
And it reminds them perhaps of where they feel they want to be, but for
Mm.
whatever reason they are not able to, because they've told themselves that they can't, and they're holding themselves back. And that can often, it's quite threatening actually, to see, sometimes to see someone so freely doing something that you feel that you want to do. You know,
Yeah.
everyone struggles with it. I struggle with it. I'd be lying if I said I didn't struggle with it. Of course I do. You
Yeah.
know, there's people that express themselves through music, and I think, oh, I let that go, and I, I should have really got back into it, and I kind of, I didn't respect my creativity, and I get all these feelings, but it's sort of like, well, if that's what's coming up, then listen
Mm,
to it. That's just,
mm,
it's very simple. Just listen to it and see where that takes you.
mm. I love it. I think it's a perfect note to end on.
Yes, thank you. Thank you
Thank
very much
you.
for this. It was a really nice conversation.
Yeah, it was beautiful. Thank you.